Right Beside You, Chapter 23. Within minutes after Richard pulled out of the garage and turned the first corner, we encountered a three-car accident at the end of the block. Emergency vehicles were all over the place and the snow was coming down so hard it was frightening. I wasn't expecting this, he commented as he made a U-turn and drove in the opposite direction. I hope that accident is not too serious and nobody got hurt, I said. I hope not either. Unfortunately, this is what we'll have to deal with until the winter breaks. I hope Richard stopped talking when he realized the street we were on had been closed at the second intersection. He made another U-turn. I'm sorry, Phil. Maybe driving in today wasn't such a great idea after all. I'll get you home as soon as possible, though. Richard, I'm not in a hurry, so you don't have to worry about rushing. Just take your time and we'll get to my place when we get there. Besides, I love looking at all the Christmas decorations. I was glad to see that most of the businesses along the way had decorated their buildings with extravagant displays of colored lights and a usual array of decorations. Our community help center had a sleigh with Santa Claus and eight reindeer on their rooftop. The display that really tugged at my heartstrings was one of the nativity scene on the porch of a restaurant, complete with three wise men kneeling over baby Jesus. For the first few miles, which included two more detours, we discussed work and a few other unrelated things. Whenever there was a lull in the conversation, I purposely brought up other things to talk about. I made sure they were not close to the subject of the ring and Richard's upcoming nuptials. I didn't realize until I looked at my calendar before I left home that today is the anniversary of the Pearl Harbor bombing, I said. My grandfather was in the Navy and was stationed there at the time, he replied. The military lost a lot of good men that day. Was your grandfather one of the casualties? A split second after I asked that question, I realized how stupid it was. No, Richard said, grinning. Otherwise, neither I nor my father would have been conceived. That's for sure. I apologize for such asking a bonehead question. That's okay. I ask a lot of bonehead questions myself. You know, since the weather is so nasty, you can just drop me off in front of my building so you can go home and get out of this mess. I'm in no hurry myself. Still like to spend a little time with that colorful grandmother of yours. Okay, well I better call and let her know I'm bringing company home. I fished my cell phone out of my purse and dialed. Grandma Lucy didn't pick up at the sixth ring, so I hung up and dialed again. Sometimes she's not close enough to the phone to get to it in time. I explained as I hit the redial button. This time she answered on the first ring. My grandmother rarely bothered to say hello anymore. Where you at was how she greeted me. I'm on my way home. A lot of the streets are closed, so I'm not sure when I'll get there. You be careful on that bus. I hope you ain't sitting in too close to the door. I'm with a friend from work. He drove in today and offered to give me a ride home. I'll bring him in to meet you. All right, baby. I hope he can stay for dinner because I've been cooking up a storm all day. Them collard greens and that rump roast on the stove is screaming. Great. I'll see you soon. I ended the call and we started talking about mundane things again. We were less than a mile from my apartment building when he brought up the ring. You know, the ring you chose resembles the one my mother had. Oh, really? That's interesting. I cleared my throat and steered the conversation in another direction. I better let you know now that my grandmother is going to badger you to stay for dinner. And if you do, she's going to talk your ear off and ask you everything there is to know about you since the day you were born. You can leave at any time. I'm sure you'd rather be doing something else. Richard glanced at me. No, I wouldn't. We remained silent the rest of the way. That gave me time to recall the conversation I'd had with Pam on Monday about Richard asking me to help him select an engagement ring. "And you agreed to do it?" she hollered, standing in my office looking at me as if I'd lost my mind. "Why not? I helped him choose things for his daughter and his mother-in-law. Not an engagement ring. Pam, the man is in love with a woman he wants to marry. I think it's wonderful." "You're happy that the man you're in love with is going to marry another woman?" "Yes, I am. I want the people I care about to be happy. I'm sure that whenever I do get married, if Richard and I are still in contact, he'll feel the same way for me." "Well, we made it," Richard said, bringing me back to the present. He parked in front of my building. The snow had completely covered the sidewalk and the front walkway to my building. As we waded through snow that literally came up to my knees, I noticed Lavina peeping out her front window. When Richard and I reached my front door, she cracked hers open and peeked some more. "Grandma Lucy, I'm home," I yelled when we got inside. "She moves kind of slow," I whispered to Richard as I waved him to my living room couch. Before he even removed his coat, he pulled out his cell phone. "I better check in with the girls." While he was talking to his daughters, I dashed toward my guest bedroom. Grandma Lucy was stretched out on the bed watching Dr. Phil. "You okay?" I rushed over and gave her a hug and a peck on her cheek. "I'm fine." She scrambled off the bed and stretched. "I wonder where Dr. Phil finds so many strange people." Richard was still on his phone, but I lowered my voice so anyway. "Come out and meet my friend. Don't get too nosy and don't go overboard trying to get him to stay for dinner." Grandma Lucy rolled her eyes and gave me a dismissive wave. Then she glanced around the room. "You seen where I left my teeth at?" "They're in your mouth. Please keep them there until my company leaves," I pleaded with my hands upward in a prayer position. I whirled around and returned to the living room. Richard had ended his call and hung his coat on the rack by the door. "My grandmother will be right out. All your girls doing okay?" "Oh, they're in their element." He leaned back on the couch and crossed his legs. "I don't allow them to sleep over too often, and when I do, it's a major event for them." I didn't want to sit down and get comfortable until Grandma Lucy made her entrance. I stood a few feet from the end of the couch. "Do they know that you're going to get married?" I asked shyly. Richard shook his head. "Not yet, but I'm sure they'll be happy when I tell them." He stopped talking and uncrossed his legs, and a sober look appeared on his face. The Christmas after my wife passed, the first item on their long wish list was a new mom. That's the only thing that's been on their list every year since, and it's still the first item. "That's sweet. I hope your fiancé lives up to their expectations," I commented, hoping I didn't sound the least bit jealous. That was the last thing I wanted Richard to think. I was thankful that something had finally brought me back to my senses, enough to end my years-long satisfaction with him. This turn of events was a bittersweet ending I would never forget. Well, I'm glad they're finally going to get what they want. Now would have been a good time to ask Richard the identity of his mystery woman. I was surprised he hadn't told me yet, but I didn't want to know right now anyway. This was probably the only occasion when I spent so much time alone with him, and I wanted to savor it. Having fond memories of him after he changed his material status would help me move on with my life and direct my feelings towards someone else. In the meantime, can I get you something warm to drink? Coca? Tea? "I'm fine, Felicia." He glanced at his watch. Just then, Grandma Lucy waltzed into the room, smoothing down the sides of her plaid house dress. As soon as she spotted Richard, she started grinning. She grinned even harder when I introduced him. She sat down next to him, and I flopped down to the wings chair facing the couch. Sister Lucy, I hope you don't mind my coming over at such short notice. Son, we love having company, and the more the merrier, Grandma Lucy gushed. Thank you. I promise I won't be any trouble, ma'am. Richard, the roads are so hazardous. You might be a while, I pointed out. I guess I should get another weather update. He pulled out his cell phone again. After staring at the screen for a few moments, he frowned. This is worse than I thought. According to a report that was posted 2 minutes ago, most of the streets leading from here to mine have been temporarily closed. It appeared to be several hours before the street cleaners clear them off. We'll stay here until they do, I suggested. He shook his head and put his phone back into his pocket. I don't want to be in the way, he protested rather weakly, I noticed. Now you listen here, young man. We'd rather have you be in the way than go out there and wreck. Grandma snarled as she wagged her finger in Richard's face. I hate to read about you in the paper. I appreciate the invitation. Shut up. Hush up. This ain't no invitation. This is common sense, Phil. You got plenty of clean blankets and pillows. Grandma Lucy shot me an amused look. After we eat, you make up a pallet on the couch for this boy. I'll go put dinner on the table. It was a tense but quick meal. As much as I loved collard greens and rump roast, and as hungry as I was by now, I had to force myself to eat the mountain of food Grandma Lucy had set in front of me. She and Richard had no trouble gobbling up everything on their plates, though. After dinner and a lot of small talk about nothing significant, we returned to the living room. I immediately excused myself to go change out of my work clothes. I didn't want to take too long because I didn't want my grandmother to say something inappropriate to Richard. I was out of the room only a few minutes, but it was a few minutes too long. When I returned, Grandma Lucy wobbled up the couch and ran to me with her arms waving like a windmill. I knew it. I knew it. I have been having the feeling all day. This is the man you're going to marry, she boomed, hugging me so hard I could barely breathe. When I started screaming, she released me. I felt so lightheaded I thought I was going to pass out. I gave Richard an apologetic look. No, Grandma Lucy. He's engaged to marry someone else. No, he ain't. My head ain't just a wig hat stand. I got a sharp brain. When you told me that time you had a special friend, I knew what that meant. He told me he was your special friend, and when he showed me the engagement ring you helped them pick out this evening, I put two and two together. I sat back down and gave Richard a weak smile. I'm sorry, she gets confused a lot. Richard gazed at me for a long time before he responded. She's not confused this time, he said, rising. The next thing I knew, he pulled the ring case out of his pocket and strode over to me. Huh? I almost hit the floor when he opened the case and held it up to my face. Felicia, will you marry me? I knew Richard had a sense of humor, but this was not funny. Richard, don't joke about something so serious. I'm not joking, he said with so much emphasis I knew he was serious. My whole body felt numb, especially my mouth. What what about the other woman? I asked when I was able to speak again. You are the other woman. You've been the other woman for a long time. Richard dropped his head. When he looked back up at me, there was an expression on his face I could not describe. It made me feel like the most loved woman in the world. I was speechless. We just stared into each other's eyes. Felicia, say something. If you don't accept this man's proposal, I'm going to whoop you. Shoot, Grandma Lucy hollered. She and Richard laughed. I blinked hard and swallowed a lump that had formed in my throat. I don't know what to say, I bleated. Say something, Grandma screeched. Do it lickety-split so I can go to my bedroom and time to catch some of the Family Feud reruns. You can go on, Grandma Lucy. I'll come get you after I've had a few minutes alone with Richard. Like, comment, and subscribe on this video. Bye-bye.